Act notice. It is being recorded, and whether you are on video or just joining us via the telephone and you comment, your comment will be recorded. This is part of our Public Records Act that we're letting you know. And what we're going to do with this recording is we will be making it public, available via the Seattle IT Department's YouTube channel, and it will be posted within the next week or so. And we'll let you all know when it's recorded via the website and our Seattle IT social media, which you can find on Twitter and Facebook. All right, now this meeting, if you want to go to the next slide, please, Omari, is being conducted over Webex, and it's one of our meeting platforms. And I just want to go through a couple basic details and instructions about how to use Webex in case you are not familiar with it. Right now, our chat feature is turned off, and we talk about it down there on the little chat icon, which you can see on your screen for those of you joining us via video. When we get to the Q&A portion of the event, the chat portion will be turned on, and so you can contribute your comment or your question through the chat portion, and then our staff will help moderate that and get the answer to the correct person. Or if we don't know the answer, we can come back at a later date with that answer to you. We will be taking questions only on the 4 technologies featured here today. So again, please keep your questions to what is limited to what information we are sharing today. That's what we're going to be talking about. You can see with participation etiquette that we ask that everybody keep their microphones muted during this presentation, and you can keep your cameras on or off, I believe, throughout this event. All right, so for our folks who are joining us via the phone, we have some instructions for you, and I'm going to read them for you since you can't see the slide. So for those of you who are on the phone, once the meeting starts, if you have a question during our Q&A portion at the end, you need to press *3 to raise your hand, and then we will see that you have a question. So once you raise your hand, you're going to hear the prompt, "You have raised your hand to ask a question. Please wait until the host calls on you." So at that point, we, the hosts, will be able to see that you have a question, and either Omari or another member of the team will say, "Okay, Sally, I see you have a question," and then you'll be able to ask your question. So to hear a list of commands during the meeting or the event, you press * twice, and then you can hear some different options you have. But if you no longer want to ask your question, or we've already called on you and you need to put your hand down, then you hit *3 to lower your hand, and you will hear the message, "You have lowered your hand." So we will be able to get your question even if you are on the phone. So we just want to make sure that is clear with that. All right, so gone over a couple instructions. I'm going to cover some ground rules. If you want to go ahead and advance the slide, please, Omari. So we ask that we are all here to adhere to the Surveillance Public Meeting Code of Conduct. I'm going to read these for you for our folks who are joining us on the phone. We ask that you be respectful of diverse opinions and experiences, be an active listener during presentations, and that we just want to let you know that anyone exhibiting disruptive behavior, intimidation, or aggression may be muted. And if so, you can provide your comment online or by letter, and we'll provide that information to you. We'd like you to keep comments as brief as possible, and again, related to the technologies that we're presenting here today, so we can allow everyone to have the opportunity to speak. All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Omari Stringer, to talk a little bit more about what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera and mute myself. I will be monitoring the time throughout this event, and I'll be putting the times in the chat so that the presenters and the folks who are watching can know that you need to start thinking of your questions and/or it's time to start wrapping up. So I will pop back in here about 1:45. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan, for the introduction, and thanks, folks, for attending today's public engagement event. So we're going to do a quick reminder, refresher, or new information for folks just joining us. The City of Seattle's definition of surveillance is defined as technologies that observe or analyze the movements, behavior, or actions of identifiable individuals in a manner that is reasonably likely to raise concerns about civil liberties, freedom of speech or association, racial equity, or social justice. Certain technologies, such as police body cameras and technologies for everyday office use, are excluded from this law. Now, given that we are still in a virtual environment, this is an online meeting. We used to have them in person long ago when that was happening. Then we would have comment cards available in person to leave comments. Of course, during that time, we also had the ability to go online with a SurveyMonkey link. So we have that link here, and we will, when the Q&A opens, we'll again provide that link in the chat so you all can click through and leave comments on each of the 4 technologies under review. We also have the ability to mail a comment to the Surveillance and Privacy Program. We have the mailing address provided there. That's also on our website, seattle.gov/surveillance. And then we will have this information provided again at the end of the meeting if you need the link again to provide a comment. Again, to note, all comments provided will be included in their entirety in the SIR and the Surveillance Impact Report that goes to City Council for their review. So this meeting is part of our public engagement. This is more of a Q&A and providing some additional questions on the technologies and getting to hear from the department as another medium rather than reading the SIR, because those can be kind of dense documents. So going through a quick rundown of events today, the Seattle Police Department is here to present on 4 technologies currently in use that are going through a retroactive review and approval process. The 4 technologies are audio recording devices, Callio, I2 IBAS, and Multigo. And this will be followed by a Q&A or public engagement opportunity after the presentation by the Seattle Police Department. I also wanted to note, kind of as we're continuing on, if there are additional comments, if this conversation makes you think of other topics of discussion or conversation, again, we're wanting to keep it to the 4 technologies in question here. If you have questions related to other technologies, you can provide email to surveillance@seattle.gov. But if you have comments or concerns around other issues not related to these surveillance technologies, we encourage you to reach out to your council member, and we provided some links here, or City Council at council@seattle.gov, as well as providing a link to reach out to SPD as they're the presenting department if you have any other follow-up questions on their policies or procedures relating to other topics. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues at the Seattle Police Department for their presentation on the Group 4A technologies.
Well, good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon. It's been a long day. My name is Paul McDonough. I'm a captain with the Seattle Police Department, and I'm going to be passing on some of the information for these technologies today. I have to apologize because I was out for some medical stuff. I have to have Omari work the slide presentation, and I'll have to see what the final presentation is and give a short snapshot of what the technology is and how we use it. And then from that, we're going to go ahead and have an area there for questions and answers at the end. The more videos that are playing, I tend to be the reason I drop, and I don't want to do that today. So I will come back a little bit later if that's all right with everybody. So we're going to talk about a talent slide. So real quickly, obviously, these are the missions of the Seattle Police Department: prevent crime, enforce the law, support quality public safety by delivering respectful, professional, and dependable police services to our whole community. And obviously, Assistant Chief Diaz stands by that pretty strongly, and all the Seattle police officers are expected to follow this mission statement. Next. So real quickly, audio recording system, what's the technology itself, and what does it mean here in our definitions? There's a slang term on TV and movies and stuff, always got a wire. Basically, it's anything that can record audio and or sometimes video, depending upon what you're doing, in real time. Oops, there we go. In real time while the criminal investigation is going on. Specifically, the devices themselves, they only turn on when we turn them on, and the devices themselves record the information, etc. But I think the biggest thing is to understand is that when we use these, it's either by consent, meaning the individual is either on the phone or in the room with us, and we say, look, we're going to record this statement or something like that. Do you mind? This is how we're going to do it. And they say, no, I understand that you're here. You're going to record it, and I give you my permission. Or we use a warrant, meaning we take the probable cause established for criminal activity, we present it to a judge, impartial judge, and the judge says yes or no, you have enough information here that would lead a reasonable person to believe that there's potential criminal activity occurring, and therefore it's okay to investigate and to record and use that recording as evidence for the criminal prosecution itself. So that's probably the gist of it. It really doesn't matter what kind of device it is. If it achieves this objective, then it's an audio recording system. So later on, we'll talk about Callio. Callio actually is just a subset within audio recording systems. And quite honestly, could fit in here, but was called out. So with that, let's go ahead and take a next look at the next slide. So the reason we use this technology is because we need to investigate criminal behavior. And in order to do that, to investigate the criminal behavior and have the evidence to put before the court and let the court determine what's going to happen, is to collect that evidence. And over time, the audio recording and video or video recording is best evidence. And either the person did or didn't say it, or their behavior, whatever was captured, they did or didn't do it. So we use these on some of our more serious crimes, or those crimes where it's a little harder to get some of that evidence. And quite honestly, the biggest thing there is it's a checks and balance on both sides. I know a lot of people say, well, yeah, you could, use it against somebody. Well, you're right. That's why we're there, to see if there's criminal behavior. But it also holds the officers and the department accountable in that what we said in the same investigation. So it's not a he said or he, she said kind of situation. So that way, the best evidence is going before the court. Again, we collect the evidence, the court makes, prosecution determines whether to file charges, and then the court itself makes the determination of guilt. So we have to make sure that we either have consent or warrant, is what it says there at the bottom of the slide there. And those are the two areas that we use this technology. We don't use it outside of that. So next slide, please. So interesting here, and we're a little different than most departments that our technical services are combined and supported by one single unit. That unit is the Technical Electronic Support Unit. We control any devices, we log in and out any software applications, that kind of stuff, to the detectives. The detective unit is responsible for making sure that any evidence collected is put into the case file per any other case, and they follow both court rules and department policy rules. We have quite extensive rules on evidence retention and storage. So the device themselves collect the data, and then we just pull it off and we give it to the case detective. Once the case detective has the data, whatever audio or video it is, the Technical Electronic Support Unit wipes the rest of it off, because the master case file is the evidence file. And that's best practice. We don't have multiple files of this thing floating around, which is also the other objective of the surveillance ordinance itself, that the police department doesn't have a whole bunch of files floating around on different things. If you want recording on a specific case, you go to the case detectives. Once they're done investigating the case and they present it to the prosecutor, then the prosecutor's office has that same data and takes the master copy, and depending upon law and whether they charge or not, will be used for prosecution. So, okay, next slide, please. So the protections here, they're pretty extensive. Washington State has some pretty good rules there under Title 9.73 of the RCW. It's the Washington Privacy Act. And there are a couple of exemptions inside that. And don't have them in front of me right now, but life safety being one of those in there, but we can get to that later if we need Omari to pull it up. But again, we go back either consent of the individual that we're recording from, we ask them and they say, yes, it's okay, or it's court issued warrant, again, going to the judge. And the deployment of it is constrained to the conditions stipulated by the court order or the consent. So if I'm recording you and I want to take a statement, I take the statement, I can't leave the device on, leave the room, and hope that you pick up your phone and call somebody else, because that wasn't the authorization given under the consent of the individual. Under a court order, the judges are very specific. You have to say what it is you want to collect, when you want to collect it, how you want to collect it, all that kind of stuff. And if we violate that, then the court doesn't allow us to use that evidence. And they could actually throw out all of it if they chose to do so. So if we don't have the legal authority from the judge under the authorization and the scope of collection is the way they phrase it, all those other descriptors I just used, then we run the risk of not being able to use it and or it being excluded for trial. The deployments are documented by TSU. There's a log. This log is auditable not only by the Office of Inspector General, which I need to point out is not controlled by the Seattle Police Department. They're a separate entity and they report to council. They have full and unbridled access to all the files and information within the department. And obviously we have a federal monitor at this time. The federal monitor and the federal judge can look at that stuff. We do have an internal SPD audit and system where the auditing unit can come through and do a spot audit on any of our stuff. So all of it should be there. And if it's not, obviously they're held a department standard. If they in turn find other violations, then they would have to forward those on for consideration of charges depending upon what the violation is. So let's do the next one real quick. I know we have 4 of these in only an hour, so we'll kind of go through and hope questions come up. Here are all the related policies. The first one there is the Washington State Privacy Act. That's that chapter 9.73 under the RCW. And then there's a whole bunch of policies here that the Seattle Police Department have that address either all of this or portions of this. I guess just taking a couple randomly here, responsibilities concerning policy violations that all the officers are required to report. Bias-free policing, if you're found that you're trying to target specific individuals based on something other than a criminal investigation, then you can be found guilty of that, let alone some other crimes that might fit under laws, either local law, state law, or federal law. Submitting evidence is the big one. There are certain rules that we have policies for that are also supported by what's called case law, meaning the courts will not accept it if it doesn't meet this minimum standard. The one that's also interesting here, criminal justice information systems, that's the federal standard, and we follow that, 28 CFR, in terms of collecting information on individuals suspected of criminal activity. So that's kind of it. I'm not quite sure if there's going to be anything else on the audio recording system. Okay, that's good. That's Callio. So we'll go back real quick, one slide. So all of these policies apply. And you can say, well, I did all of them except the last one, and you could still be found in violation of that for a policy violation. In terms of the law, all this information that we collect and are using as evidence is also, when it's presented to the prosecuting attorney under discovery, the defense side of the house. So the person charged with the crime, their lawyers, the defense lawyers, get to have access to that same information. And again, that's to make the field fair for everyone and there's no surprises. So in terms of that, there are a number of checks and balances in here. Additionally, the supervisors have to approve the use of this, and warrants are approved and reviewed by the prosecuting attorney, oftentimes prior to execution of some of these more complicated cases. So let's go ahead and move on to Callio real quick. So Callio is basically an audio recording device, which fits under the other category. It was called out specifically for some reason. It's a cell phone recording technology. So when undercovers utilize a cell phone, obviously if the phone is registered to the Seattle Police Department, then some of the criminals won't interact with us. And so they can have a cell phone that's set up that masks their identity. It doesn't say it's the Seattle Police Department, it's whatever they're professing, excuse me, that was a hard word to say, professing to say. And then it also has the ability to record. And I'm going to get to the next section here, which has a little bit of a typo in there. But Callio is software as a service. It is not a piece of equipment. It's something that we put on specific phones that we possess and we control. excuse me, I was kind of coughing there for a second. Callio that software has to be installed on a phone, and it can disguise the identity of the officer making the phone call, or if someone calls in, says it's that one. It does have the ability to record phone conversations. However, that capability has to be turned on and set up ahead of time with TSU, and I'm hoping that the next slide shows that. If not, I'll definitely, Omari, make sure I come back to that specific point, please. And then here's the point that's pretty confusing. And GPS locates identifiable individuals. That's actually not worded accurately. It can GPS locate the phone that we own, the one that we put this software on. If we call somebody that, the potential criminal here in the investigation, we can't GPS locate where they're at. It can only GPS the phone they actually possess, that we possess. So I'm not quite sure how that got written in there because it's in the SIR also, but that's not true, and I confirmed that as early as this morning. So in terms of that, we can track our phone where that officer is and all that, but in terms of tracking somebody else, I can't do that with Callio. So with that, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm hoping it talks about when does it use. Yeah, there we go. So obviously undercover operations, theoretically, you could use it in an investigation, but you'd have to get consent from the individual. And that consent would have to be then repeated on the recording itself. I can always give consent for someone else to record me, but in Washington State, we have two-party consent unless there's a criminal investigation and you have a warrant. So in terms of that, the consent or authorization is there, consent is there. The other one is the warrant that we talked about earlier. We present the information, we have a potential criminal investigation to the judge, and the judge either approves the warrant with specific guidelines in there or doesn't. If it doesn't, then we can't do it. The other way is what's called an authorization. A commander can authorize it for officer safety or the individuals that's carrying the phone's personal safety, that we can listen in, but it's not recorded. And that's in high-risk situations, has to be done. They log it, they get approval from a commander, and then those high-risk authorizations is what I'm going to call it, or higher risk authorizations done by the commander, is reviewed monthly by the King County Prosecutor's Office. And usually they're involved in these investigations as they go on. So there we have three. We can do consent, we can do warrant, we can do an emergency or a high-risk safety listening of the phone call or listen in on what's going on, but we can't record it. So again, 9.73 is also there in terms of some of the exemptions. Obviously, it helps us collect the evidence. If I call up and say, look, I want to buy a couple kilos of methamphetamine or fentanyl, something like that, then we want to have that as best evidence. And again, we have to do it under a warrant in a criminal situation like that. If I later go and I'm meeting with the individual and they say, well, this guy, carries a lot of firearms, he's a pretty serious felon, we want to make sure that you stay safe. If anything goes sideways, we can listen in, but again, that requires the authorization that I just talked about. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. So the data collection, basically it records the audio conversation that goes out over the phone itself. And again, it's used during a criminal investigation, so we do that. All of that information, this is software as a service. It's collected in a CJIS compliant server offsite, and we're the only ones that have access to it. In fact, the detectives don't even have access to it. The only people that have access to it is the Technical Electronic Support Unit. Again, that's another checks and balance. They'll take the data, download it, give it to the case detectives, and then delete it from the server. There is an audit trail built into it. And in that audit trail, anytime that number, the phone is used, they can figure out what they're using it for, which is another checks and balance that they can't record. The detective who owns the phone can't record without setting that up ahead of time, and they can't delete the fact that they used the phone. So again, all of that information is presented to the King County prosecutor, and also available to defense. The legal authority, TSU documents this. They'll set it up. If they don't have a phone, we'll activate their Callio account for that phone, and we document the equipment requested, what it is they're doing, the legal authority, meaning do they have a warrant or not, and then the case number, so that we can track when we activated the service and when we did not, and that's by individual case number. Trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to say about Callio. Can we see the next slide there, Omari, please? So some of the protections here, only after legal standards of consent, right? The court issued warrant, which I've already hit twice. And again, that's governed under the Privacy Act of Chapter 9.73. And there's a couple of exemptions there. And while I'm doing this, I don't have time to pull that up, so I can't share screen, but maybe Omari on the background on another screen if you want to pull that up to show everybody, or I believe you had it as a link in the SIR. I don't know if we have it at the end, but people can go there and check that out. It's a great resource. It's constrained. We don't do this anytime we want, stipulated by the consent, which I talked about, or the court order itself. Oftentimes the court orders only last a certain period of time. They'll put in a certain time frame, and you can't use it after that. Legally, you can't use it, and you're subject to all the prosecutions and or discipline of policy violations, and you can't use it in court because you're outside the scope of the warrant. And so that's all documented in many, many case laws, etc. So that's in there. They're documented by TSU again, as I just said, and they're subject to the audit that I talked about earlier. Our internal people can do it anytime, but more importantly, the Office of Inspector General, who is designed to do audits and report back to council based on systemic issues and things that they've identified. They have full access to it. And of course, the federal monitor also has access to it. So, okay, what about the next one? So these are all the policies. Again, you'll see that some of these are redundant. That's because just being able to say, oh, I did this, well, yeah, but it also violated CJIS rules and submitting the evidence rules, and under standards and duties, you can't share information gained on the job, that kind of thing. So there's a number of things that our department members are held accountable to, and we have to make sure that we follow those when we deploy this technology or any technology. So those are looking at it pretty much the same as the last one, which will be for all of these. So next slide, please. Okay, so IBM's I2 IBAS, or IBAS is what we call it, just anecdotally. The little diagram there is probably the best thing that I could put on this slide to show you what it is. The short answer is it checks law enforcement databases for information on subjects or locations, etc., and it pulls that data. And then it puts it into the old pin board or crazy board, where you put all the data up there and you try to draw linkages between people. Hey, does Paul know Steve? Does Steve know Jeff? And Jeff knows Paul? Or how does this work? Is there a criminal enterprise or what? And again, all of this data is collected on the back end of a law enforcement database that we already possess. So all that information has come in through legal means, meaning it's a case report, they've been arrested, those kind of things. They could be charged in another jurisdiction for a crime, such as sexual assault, and we've had a pattern up here. Subject matches the description, but we don't have any criminal history on them. If they were to run a name check, the system pulls that data, comes back, says here it is, and then allows these two investigative analysts to be able to put that information together into a visual representation of what we think may or may not have gone on. And then they pass that information on to the investigators to move the investigation itself forward. So that's what the technology is. Doesn't go out and break into anybody's software systems or anything. It's back behind the law enforcement firewall under CJIS rules, Criminal Justice Information System rules, which is a federal standard. So next slide, please. So we can use this information if we run them and push it out through the Real-Time Crime Center. That is to other individuals who can run names and plates and support not criminal activity, excuse me. They support patrol or specialty units in the field in real time when they're activated to pass on additional information. If they say, hey, we have a plate here, does anybody know who it's belonged to? Instead of tying up radio time, we can do that on the back end and then have a direct communication with the detectives. And they can visualize this at a later time in a more clean manner, but they can also do this background and then share it with the case detectives, who can then expand or contract their investigation based on some of the information there. So this is the same thing that we've done for years. Most businesses used to do it too, is you have that wall and you put the pin maps in, like I said earlier, and it allows us to do it electronically and to check the systems a little bit better. So on this one, we don't do any collection or analysis of the information itself. All it does is go out, grab the information, put it into a visualized format, and then that visualized format lets the detectives understand what is going on, maybe relationships between either locations, how many shootings these locations have had, what they haven't had, those kind of things. So I think we can go to the next slide to talk about this. Here are some of the records: record management system, computed aided dispatch system. Those are some of the things they check. They may also manually add information that they have during the course of the investigation. So if a witness says it was a red car and all that, they could add that to the visualization. And if there's anyone with a red car, that may make a hint. But that's also some of the stuff that they can do in trying to understand what's going on. But again, it just organizes data that we already own or that we already have access to and through legal means. Next one, please. I want to make sure I covered on it. Yeah, here we go. So only authorized users can access the system. And the two predominant ones are my criminal investigative analysts. They do a really, really good job. They're CJIS compliant. They've passed all the access privacy stuff for the city, all of that. They understand all those rules. And with that, they are able to utilize the software and create good things for my follow-up units to track down some of these criminals. One of the things that always comes up is there accountability built into it? Yes, there is accountability, and there is an audit process. So everybody who logs in and out, each time each time they access the system or any other data or make any changes in. Oh, excuse me, had to drink water. It'll go ahead and log that, so we can go back through time and say, hey, what did you use it for here? And obviously they put in what it's being used for, what criminal activity that is being investigated. So this is also stored on an SPD server. It's not sent out to anyone else. You pay for the software and we own it, we check it, and we do all of it in-house, so we control the data. Excuse me. The only authorized users right now that are authorized for that are in TSU and or in the information support, investigative support unit, sorry about that. So we had a couple of people that have access to it. Obviously my supervisor does for auditing purposes. I think we can go to the next one. We can go in there. Again, these are the same policies. Again, because we're basically using information or talking about information, these are all the protections that we have built in. And the surveillance ordinance, the City of Seattle intelligence ordinance, and case law rules, things like that also apply. But these are the ones that I think most people want to make sure that we're following. And then, of course, the federal rule of CJIS information. So I think if it's okay, I'll go ahead and move on to Multigo. So Multigo is a software system that is used mainly in our cyber crimes, trying to track down cyber crimes, which is unfortunately an extremely rapidly growing platform of crimes. It's quite honestly very successful. And we have a number of units that look into it, but investigative support has personnel. Right now, there's 2 people authorized to use Multigo. They sit in investigative support, and they support the the back checking of some of the cyber information in an effort to track down who the criminals might be. And basically what it does, it's a cybersecurity software application, and it's used to research publicly available data and diagram those associations, kind of like a crazy board or that link chart pin board that we talked about earlier. Now, it can go between individuals, devices, and networks as part of these investigations. And everybody goes, well, individuals, well, yeah, if I register my online account in my name and it's publicly available, then yeah, your name could come up. But it also tracks down, that recording information of the systems that the networks that it hit, and or hopefully the devices that it came from, because again, we have to be able to show the specific individual that may or may not have committed a crime. And for us, we want the one that committed a crime. If they didn't commit the crime, then no harm, no foul, we'll move on. As it says here, it queries public data on the internet, such as domains and other things like that, and then puts it into a visualization. I think the biggest thing to say there is it does it very efficiently and effectively, but it's all same stuff that you theoretically could go out and do if you had the time or the energy to start running checks on certain things. Multigo we use a free system. It doesn't have any build-ups. We only check public data sources, meaning that which anyone who has internet access could check that same data. So it's really a visualization software. It doesn't come back when you run Google and you run a name, it gives you a long list. This puts it a little bit more in a visualization platform, showing some of the connections and who may or may not be associated with it. Oh, 2 minutes.
Oh, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to. I just want to make sure you have a time check. If you need to wrap it up a little bit so we can get to the plenty of time for Q&A.
Perfect. I will do that. I apologize.
Nope, I know you're passionate about this, so that's great. Thank you.
So I just really want to say that we don't get any privatized data. It's again, we don't have that capability here. To get that capability, you'd have to pay for more service, and we're not doing that. So next slide real quick. I have less than 2 minutes, so I'll fly through it, but you're going to see a lot of the same stuff as before. We work very closely with the City of Seattle Information Technology section on cyber crimes. They obviously have a lot of expertise and do a great job. We do the investigative side on many of these, and so they work hand in hand, and it's all above board for the investigation. We've already said that, so the next slide. I've already talked about it. It hits public databases, and much like Google, returns results based on specific search terms. All of that has an audit trail, and we can see what we did and what was going on. Multigo does not get any of our data. It's all on the system itself. We send it out, we do the search, it comes back to us. They may ask, what you searched at, but they don't get any of our results. So we keep all that data there. If we need it, we keep it. If not, it's discarded and deleted. Again, it talks down here about digital origin of attacks on cybercrime infrastructure. Obviously, that's very serious. Everybody heard about some of the things that happened on the East Coast there with the pipeline shutdown, et cetera. That's the kind of thing that we try to use Multigo to look into. Next slide, please. So again, I have 2 people that are trained and authorized to use this, other than the supervisor who can go in and look at it. The supervisor doesn't do a lot of the searching or any of the searching that I'm aware of. Obviously, the other ordinances here and everything else applies for criminal law that I've talked about on all the other technologies. Next one. There they are. And the next slide, Omari. Again, I'm coming up on 2 minutes here. So here we go.
Thank you so much, Paul. All right, I think Omari is going to turn on the chat functionality. And Omari, if you need to stop sharing your screen and you can just pop us up, there we go. He's going to open up the chat function. So thank you so much again, Paul, for all of your very detailed information. I see the Q&A is open. So if you want to go ahead, if you have a question, please go ahead and type it in. And Omari, I see that Cynthia on the phone has a question, so I'll let you kind of take over and handle answers. Let Cynthia ask her question.
Okay, Cynthia, you should be unmuted now. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yep, perfect.
Regarding Callio, aside from the high-risk victim unit, is Callio only deployed by the TESU when there's a court order? Are there TESU Callio deployments that don't need a court order?
The only time, if you happen to have Callio already put on your phone, you could in fact use it with consent, but you'd obviously ask the individual first, hey, Paul, do you mind if I record you for this statement for this case? Nope, go right ahead. Okay, I'm going to repeat that when I turn it on. So they could then turn it on and record a phone call between someone that was consenting. But no, they have to have Callio, and the only people that can put it on is TSU.
Thank you, Cynthia. I see that there's another question from PM Craft. Omari, can you unmute them and see if they can, that is also over the phone?
I have requested that they unmute. PM Craft, you should be unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I think the Q&A feature in the comments doesn't seem to be appearing for me, but my question was, there have been a number of computer scientists, researchers who have established that search engine results are frequently racially biased, such as by returning crime-related results for people with common African-American names. I'm wondering how the police department's usage of Multigo deals with this issue.
Yeah, quite honestly, they can go ahead and send back anything they want, but our detectives still have to do a check on each individual source of that to determine if it is in fact criminal. Now, I realize that just looking at people is offensive, but we have to be able to exclude them also. And so, how can I also say, it depends on what you were searching there, but if I was searching for somebody that was within a certain area, say Seattle, and all the things came back from somewhere else in the country, then okay, do we have anything that shows that Paul moved over there? We do make sure, again, racially biased. We have not only supervisors that watch for it, the detectives themselves watch for it, and our prosecutors watch for it. So I'm pretty confident that we at least are aware of the issue and try to address it as much as we can control it.
Thank you, Paul, for that response. We also want to just point out that while we are taking Q&A, if you have a comment that you would like to leave that is part of the official record on this surveillance technologies, you are welcome to do so at this time as well. And I believe we have another question that's on our Q&A feed. I'm not sure, Paul, if you can see that. I believe the question is for you as well.
I will try to get to it. I'm not seeing it. I'm agreeing with the earlier comment there that it might not be working. Hold on.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read it so we can keep moving along.
Thank you.
It says, besides Callio, what specific type of audio recording devices, brand, make, software, function, etc., does SPD possess? For the other three technologies, does SPD have contracts with the companies that own these technologies, Motorola Solutions, Paterva, and IBM? And if so, what are the terms of those contracts? I'm not 100% sure this question relates to the technologies presented today. So Paul, if that is not the case, we can answer this at a later date, because again, we're just taking questions on what was presented today.
Yeah, well, and I don't have a lot of that information in front of me anyway, so I can't answer it. Okay. So I guess if they want to put that into the market there and we talk about it later, that's fine.
Okay, well, we have it on record. Whomever, I believe it was, whomever has submitted this, we have it on record, and we will send it over to Paul and make sure he gets it and can figure out the best way to respond. You may also respond. There is a SurveyMonkey survey that Omari has put in the chat. that if you want to submit a comment online for any of these technologies, you may do so. And I believe, Cynthia, you have your hand raised again.
Yes, and just to confirm too, I also don't see a chat window, but regarding Callio, so you mentioned having it like if it was already on the phone, then they could use it with consent, assuming they got such consent. That kind of ties in. Does this mean that like does SPD, or I should say specifically TSU, pre-install the Callio apps on SPD phones? Like when SPD is issued a phone, it has it pre-installed, or do they install it as needed and then maybe it lingers on the phone, or is it after a court-ordered use of it, the device is returned to TESU and they remove the Callio app?
No, you're more correct with the last portion of your question there. It's put on the phone, used, and then it's not used because TSU actually has to activate it on the back end. The person in the field doesn't have the ability to record unless they've had that pre-authorized. And yes, TSU does in fact review the warrant itself and make sure that they have legal standing. Legal authorization, sorry, not legal standing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Again, I just want to reiterate that this is also the opportunity to take a public comment on any of the technologies you've seen today. So if anybody has a comment, this is the time or place to do so. And I noticed a couple folks have commented that they can't see the Q&A. I am not sure why that is. So what we're going to do after this presentation, we're going to put the link to the survey on our Tech Talk blog and on our Twitter feed, so that if you have participated, you can still go and put that on, leave us your comment. And I will make sure that we get that out here in an upcoming slide, what that address is, so that you can participate in that. All right. I see that Jen is on the phone, I believe, and she has a question as well. Oh, Mari, do you see that? Oh, Jen just disappeared. I'm not sure if she changed her mind, but I see that PM Kraft has another question.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, just coming back to my question from Multigo, I wonder, can you give more details on the procedure through which the usage of that technology is audited for its racial bias?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you want me to say on that one. Obviously, any information that we get, we have to make sure that it's reasonably to apply to an criminal investigation. So just because it pops up doesn't mean it's going to be used. I'm not quite sure what else I could say other than the detectives make sure that the individuals that they investigate have a reasonable association to the criminal activity. Their supervisors look for that, as do the prosecutors. So I know that we're very much aware of that. And by case law, I can't just bring someone in just because they have a name that sounds similar. So I'm not quite sure where else you would like me to go with that question.
All right, thank you. We've got about 5 minutes left. Again, this is your opportunity to leave a comment on any of the 4 technologies you've seen today. I see, Cynthia, you have your hand raised again.
Yes, just a follow-up regarding Callio. So Callio is the like subsidiary now of Motorola. What apps within Callio does SPD use? There's like the 1021 police phone, video or flight. There's also the Livewire and Pulse apps and VIP and the voice recorder. Does SPD use all of the Callio apps, the ones I just listed, or are there only a subset of those that SPD uses?
I won't be able to answer that by name of what you just called them, their little tricky name for it. What we can do is we can mask the phone number you're calling to make it whatever the undercover phone number is supposed to be. We can record that data, right? And we can GIS locate the phone that we possess, the one that we control. Other than that, we don't have any other capabilities within Callio. The ability to activate the phone for the safety portion that is authorized under state law. But other than those, those 4 things, I guess it is, we don't do any of the other ones.
Sorry, just one clarification on that regarding the answer then. It seemed like some use cases of, especially like Livewire Pulse within the broad marketplace of users of Callio would be not just with the undercover police officer who maybe has it turned on to have his GPS coordinates tracked, but perhaps you have a civilian who is under some kind of a agreement with, say, SPD, and is, I'm forgetting the term off the top of my head, but basically providing data back to SPD for the true target suspect. So it would mean that the app would be deployed on a civilian phone that's being tracked, not an SPD phone necessarily. So is that something that SPD does?
I can tell you I haven't heard that, but you also said something in there that if the person is working with us and they're recognized by the court as a confidential informant or a cooperating witness, then yes, we have the ability to give them a phone and utilize Callio for that as part of an investigation. Again, you said that we could then track the person's phone that he's with, or something about tracking the other person. I'm not quite sure that Callio can do that. We can only track that which the phones that we control and have put Callio on. So they may have other capabilities built into Callio, but our capabilities right now are the ones that I mentioned earlier.
All right, thank you so much, Paul. We have time for one more very brief question, and then we need to sign off. So I see we've got a question from, I believe it's Ferris Peel. I believe you've got a question. And
are there any, can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Great. So I kind of have a couple of questions, but I'll try to make them fast. First, outside of Callio, what actual types of audio recording devices are being referred to in the audio/wire SIR? What are those actual technologies? Because what kind are they? And then the other set of questions I have are there any limits on the manual data that can be imported into IBAS? And can you speak to the Search 360 function in IBAS and whether SPD uses that and how so? Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to I'll take Multigo first real fast. I'm not familiar with the 360, but the input of data is data that we already have. And is there a limit to it? I don't know. And I don't know what you're asking there, because if we have the information, then we have access to it and we could put it into a link chart. I could do that manually, or I could do it with the system. So I don't see a variation there in terms of Multigo. Obviously, we have to possess the information. Excuse me. And I think the first question was what again, Ferris? I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through all of that and scribble notes, but I can't read it. The type of something?
I've requested they've unmute, but it may not have gone through. I know that it can be a little clunky. So I think Ferris has put that question in the Q&A as well. So we'll have that, the text of it documented as well, so that we can follow up on some of these questions, and that will be posted in the follow-up when we post the recording and presentation.
Yep, I agree. We are at time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our first open house for the 4th group of technologies featured here. So what is going to happen next? So here is the link. You can visit this link, the Group 4A Technology Survey, to submit your comment about this technology. We're also going to be posting this link on seattle.gov/tech, and you could have it, leave a comment there in the Tech Talk blog. We will put that link right there. We'll do that shortly after this meeting. So if you give us like 15 minutes, we're going to move the link over there, since we were having some technical difficulties with the Q&A section. So just give us some time and it'll be there. These comments will be collected and included in the SRI submitted group or submission to the Surveillance Advisory Working Group, and then they will go to the City Council for the full vote. There is going to be another public event similar to this on June 29th. I believe it's at 3 p.m. The same information will be presented at that time. So if you wanted to join us again, you could, or if not, please know you will not be missing anything. With that, I'm just going to say thank you all for attending, and thank you for Omari and Paul for presenting today. And thank you so much. We'll go ahead and close out the meeting. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.